rich people are not all the same. If you meet someone who made his money incrementally over time, he's much less likely to have the desire. You may not agree with him on everything. Totally. He may be a good person, a bad person, but he doesn't want to tear it down. And he doesn't feel especially guilty for what he has. And I have found, just a non-political point, but as I get older, I want to spend less time with people who hate themselves because they're not capable of loving other people. Like, that's not a good place to start, actually, as a person, to hate yourself or feel super guilty. It really isn't. You don't end up helping others when you feel that way. But when you find people who inherited a lot of money, we never talk about that. It's a huge problem in this country. I'm not arguing for the death tax at all, but I'm just saying, as an observation, there's a huge class of people with massive inherited wealth, and they're almost all horrible. Not all of them. I mean, I know very well. I know some of them, and they're fine. Some of them are great. But as a class, they're awful, and they don't help at all. And they're also super annoying and dumb. And I think it's no, it's just true, and everyone knows it's true.
By the way, we're about to do that for tens of millions of Americans, right? I know. We're about to go the largest generation of wealth transfer beyond imagination. We're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. So that problem that you just encapsulated, we're going to cascade across tens of millions of Americans.
Yes, which also happened in Japan.
I agree.
And in Japan, they have a negative growth rate as well. Let's pivot to a topic that...
Wait, can I ask you, have you been to Japan recently?
Yeah, I was there last year.
Okay, so me too. So people, you always read like all the libertarian economists in the Wall Street Journal. They're always like, oh, Japan's a disaster, negative growth. And then you go to Japan.
It's like the best place you could ever visit. It's my favorite country, hands down. Did you go to Tokyo? Did you go skiing in Niseko? Where'd you go?
I went to Kyoto and Tokyo, and I'll be back to ski on the North Island because it's like, why wouldn't you? It's like the perfect place,
have you ever skied in Niseko?
I never have, but it's
incredible.
Very psyched.
I went last year. It is like 25 out of 30 days in January and February. It dumps powder, and the powder is like dust. It's like makes Utah powder look like heavy. It is insane. I'm going back if you want to go. February. It's incredible.
I may have a bromance starting with Tucker right now.
The two of you could share a room.
You guys could have like one clean bed.
This is going to make Sachs lose his mind if Tucker and I go to Niseko.
No, but can I just ask you a question? Like,
yes.
If Japan is the butt of every joke that economists tell, or the focus of the concern of economy, lots of chin tugging and fretting about Japan's negative growth economy, and then you go to Japan and there's literally not one piece of litter, and 4-year-olds ride the subway unaccompanied.
Highest function society you could imagine, but yet birth rate is going down. That's the only thing that's strange.
The birth rate is a real thing. I totally agree. That's probably the product of getting atomic bombs dropped on you. And maybe the fact also that like the highest testosterone males flew their planes into U.S. aircraft carriers or whatever. I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons.
Interesting theory.
But that's a real thing, by the way. You kill all the high T males and your society changes. But I don't think that we're using the right measurements. And I do think that we're taking economists a little more seriously than they deserve, because they're not describing what Japan actually is, which is freaking awesome and way more functional than our society, despite the massive disparity in growth rates.
The thing you'll find is every person in Japan takes their job that they're doing as incredibly important and has massive pride in it. That's why when you go there as an American, you're like, wait, wasn't this what America was about? It's really shocking as American, because you're like, this is what I want society to be. I want the person who works in the subway or the stock market or the newspaper to take their job deadly serious and put their best effort in. And
so why should I care about growth rate? Wait, but hold on though. Why should I care about economic growth, at least as measured in the conventional sense?
The only reason is if you have a lot of debt. That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. If you didn't have all the debt, you don't care about it. You shouldn't care about economic growth rate with respect to the measure of prosperity.
The strange thing is,
if the pie isn't getting bigger and people aren't doing better, then that does sow the seeds for a revolution. I mean, all this divisiveness will start to explode if people don't feel like their circumstances are getting better off. This is where, I mean, in this one limited way, I guess I'd be in favor of rapid change, which is the technological area. I mean, I'm against revolutionary politics. I'm against that kind of revolutionary change because it almost never works out. But I do think that revolutionary change in the narrow category of technology is ultimately good for us. I know it creates challenges. I know it creates disruption. People do lose their jobs and have to find new ones. But it is the basis for American prosperity and the basis for our economy being productive and America having a powerful military and all those things. So I don't know if this is a difference between us, Tucker, but I do think that in this area of technological change, I'm not sort of a dispositional conservative. I mean, this is kind of like Peter Thiel, right? I don't want us to slow down. Actually, I want us to be successful. And it feels like actually it's the people on the left who are generally in this camp of wanting to slow us down and mire us in regulations and make it harder to make progress technologically because it's something they don't control.
I agree with that. I guess the net result is what I care about. I think it's, if you talk to old people, which now that I'm getting older and I've talked to, older relatives and stuff, like what bothers you? And I used to think it was, taking a leak 6 times a night, but it's really not. The thing that bothers old people I've spoken to anyway is the change. It's like they don't recognize it. And that's really hard for people to deal with. And so all I'm saying, I'm certainly not calling for a halt to technological progress. That would be terrible. All I'm saying is, in tandem with those advancements should be the concern about people's ability to digest massive change. And let's keep some things the same. You just can't change everything. It's bad, it's super bad. So maybe we get AI, but let's keep Halloween. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're arguing for tradition and things that bring people together. Yeah. This country was built off of immigrants, obviously, and this is one of the most polarizing issues, Tucker, in each election cycle and in the country writ large right now. What is your vision for how American immigration should work here in the 21st century?
Ideally, or right now?
Right now, and then ideally. Let's start with what would you do right now, short term?
Well, actually, let me, if you don't mind, I'll quickly invert it and say, of course, the goal is just a rational immigration policy whose purpose is to help your country.
What would that look like?
And so I could see an argument, for example, if you needed, I don't know. I mean, there was a time for the guy who was just saying, my college roommate, my best friend, came to this country from India because both his parents were physicians, and there was a lack of physicians with deindustrialization. Everyone was moving out of the small towns, and so we expedited the visas of foreign physicians. Most of them were Indians. I think most were Indians. His parents actually came from Africa, but whatever. The point is, they're Indian doctors, and they came here, and they settled in a little town in Massachusetts, a rural town, dying mill town, and it was great. It was great for them. It was great for the town. The guy became my best friend. I mean, that's what you want, right? We need this, and we're going to, in a very smart, intentional way, try to get it on the world market. And we can, and we will. And I'm totally for that. What we're doing now is throwing open the doors to anyone who wants to come here from the poorest countries in the world at a scale that we can't possibly digest. So how many people are here illegally working off the books? Some estimates 60, 70 million. Those are real estimates, by the way, not crackpot estimates. But the truth is we don't know. We have no idea. So we've completely lost control. And we don't know who these people are. I honestly think most of them are here for a better life. I believe that. I think most of them are probably good people. I think most of them agree with my politics, actually, for whatever it's worth. Definitely much more than the unhappy private equity wives do, for sure. The average guy from Nigeria is on my side. Every Salvadoran agrees with me. So I like that. But I also think it's too much, actually. At exactly the moment when native-born Americans' birth rates are tanking, over 100,000 people die of fentanyl ODs, and we're pushing euthanasia on the population, which we are, you're saying I've given up on the people who live here, whatever their color or background, and we're just going to import new people and replace them with new people. That's literally what's happening. And when you say that out loud, they freak out and call you some sort of crazed bigot for saying the word replacement, but that's what it is. And it's happening in Western Europe and Ireland particularly. That's what those riots were about. Not that I'm endorsing the riots, but that's what that was. And that's insane for a government to do to its own people. It's totally insane. And more than anything, it is an expression of loathing for the people who live there. It's a dilution of their political power. It's a dilution of their economic power. It's the total destruction of the basic services that they paid for, like schools, hospitals, roads. Those are gone. So the last thing I'll say is, people say, well, immigrants are coming here looking for a better life. And I believe that, having talked to a lot of immigrants and grown up around them in Southern California, I totally believe that. But the question for government is, am I making the citizens' life better? It's no one even thinks that. So is importing people making the life? So when my friend's parents came, both physicians, to the little mill town in New England, his parents made the town better for the people who lived there. They were the doctors. And they were super successful, actually, and great people.